Hey there, and welcome in to Varsity Vibe. I'm your host, Alyssa Orange. It is great to be with you. It is finally that time of the year. Baseball and softball, soccer, those spring sports underway around the state. And so we get to now talk to some of the best players and coaches around the state in those sports. And I'm excited to open up that because as a former softball player, this is my time of the year. And softball, it's been really cool to see not only the sport grow nationally, but the talent grow here in the state of Arkansas. There have been many girls from the state that have gone on to play D1 softball in the state or around the country. And someone who has covered the softball ranks for quite some time now is Kyle Sutherland. So it was a pleasure to get him on our show to break down this year's classifications and see exactly how he thinks each of these divisions are going to shake up and who is going to be playing for another state championship come May. So enjoy my conversation as we get ready for softball season to really kick it into high gear with Kyle Sutherland. Welcoming in Kyle Sutherland. And Kyle, I'm so excited to talk softball with you. It is that time of the year. It feels like it was just yesterday we were sitting in a gym at UCA calling these games for the state finals. And here we are once again to talk about the upcoming season. Well, I say upcoming, games have started, and teams are starting to play and get their seasons going. But let's take a look at what we could expect from the sport here around the state. And before we kind of break down some teams, are there some players that you really think people need to keep their eye on?
Oh, absolutely. I think it starts first and foremost just right up in your area. But surprise, surprise from Bentonville. They've been just a powerhouse. If you look at Bentonville, you look at Harbor, and you probably got the three best pitchers in the state on those two teams. I also would probably give some of that nod to Kaylee McDonald at Desart down in 2A. But of course, you bring Dalen Osborne comes over from Rogers, and now they have her, the NC State commit, along with the Texas A&M signee in the circle, Darby Burnett, which I guess Darby was the MVP of the state tournament last year. Then Springdale Harbor, which has become Bentonville's bitter rival, just because those two they played in the past two state tournaments and their conference foes. You look at Sierra Dots there, that is a commit to Missouri. So you got three Power Four commits just right there. At least that's off the top of my head. Three Power Four commits just right there in that conference. And then that's just the pitchers. You look, of course, too, at Bentonville. You've got Alyssa, you got Alexis Lorenage, all these different D1s, and just kids that are going to college. So I think that's probably the first place that you look at. But then also, as I mentioned, Kaylee McDonald, that's a 2A player that's going to go to Southern Miss. So I know a lot of people you look at the pitchers, that's where everything starts. And those are some names to watch for sure.
Well, as we start there, and you mentioned Bentonville, we'll go ahead and talk about the 6A state champions. And I got to spend some time with Coach earlier a few weeks ago and talking about this team. And just again, it's one of those things where they just plug in players and they continue to roll. And when you have a culture that's laid the way that it is there for him and the success that they've had, it's never about just like one team to the other. It's just a steady culture change, like revolve. And so when you look at what they have, and then you mentioned Harbor, is there any way that anyone but those two teams can compete for a 6A title? Is there anyone else you got to be looking at?
I like Brian a lot. Madeline Baldwin, I like their
Okay.
pitcher. As far as actual state title contenders, I mean, right now you've got to put, and not just because they've won the past two and they've got a lot coming back from those teams, but it's just when you think about the pitching first and foremost, and you think about, I mean, I think you could pretty much look at Bentonville. Harbor's got some too. I mean, Savannah Mouse and Briley Bratch. I mean, they've got so many different names as well. But I mean, you look literally at every position in the field for Bentonville, there is somebody that is going to college. And so, and just on top of that, I call it the factory. I mean, Ken Early signs about 7, 8 kids just about every single season. And so I think it's those two. And then the biggest question for me is not who's the necessary. Bentonville's the favorite in 6A with Harbor right behind them to me. Right after that, it's the question of who's going to be third in the 6A West, maybe even more so than who is the state champion contenders behind those. And like I said, I like what Bryant has a lot. And I think Fayetteville has a chance to be a sleeper, not putting them in a state title contender category. What will Rogers do? Because Rogers, that's all what it is. In some of the bigger games, they've had some struggles hitting. You look at especially the semifinals in the past few years, they've lost a 2-1 game or a 1-0 game. So now that they don't have Dalen Osborne there, I think they've got a lot of questions to be answered. Bentonville West, what will they do there? Anthony Cantrell's done a great job, but they haven't been able to take that next step. So I think that really it's kind of Bentonville and Harbor right there at the top, and then the biggest question is who's going to be that 3 seed in the West, and then probably that's along those same lines. That's when you start talking about who's any state title contenders behind them.
Real good insight there. Let's go to the 5A, which is, around your area of Arkansas with Benton and Sheridan. And then those two competed last year for a state title, with Benton being able to have that kind of success there and win that title. Is there anything in the 5A that jumps out to you?
That's another one of those that not just because they're the defending state champions, but it's theirs until somebody takes it. And that's the crazy thing is, Alyssa, we saw how good that team and Sheridan, they gave him a lot of free passes. And that's a big reason why. I'm not saying Benton wouldn't have won the state championship, but the reason why
it was an 11-4 game.
Yeah,
right.
we called that one. We called 6A, yeah. And it was they gave him just too many free. And you cannot give a team that is that skilled, that disciplined, that fast. You can't give them free bases. And so they played him the other night. And look, it's early March, and I talked to Scott Hoffman, and he was very pleased overall, even though it was a 4-0 loss. That's one player. I'll tell you, if there's any player to watch in the state right now that's a newcomer freshman, it's Abby Eggers, the sophomore or the freshman pitcher at Sheridan. They've got, of course, Skylar Sterrett, that's a Razorback signee. Her sister, Sadie Sterrett. So Skylar is shortstop, and then Sadie's going to be in the outfield. She's a 28, and she's going to be an SEC player. She's going to be a P4 player somewhere. But Abby Eggers, I'll tell you, she has had some. I think they played 3 games at this point, and you look at the Benton game in particular. I think that was 1-0 in the 6th inning. So you're hanging in there against that lineup. You've looked a lot better than you looked in the state championship. So of course it started. And look, 5A usually does start with Benton and Sheridan. That's been the last. I mean, that's been every state champion since COVID, pretty much. It has been. So, but also I think you think about the Central. Bologna is going to be good. I think Greenbrier is going to be pretty solid. Out west, up in your area, look out for Farmington. Farmington is young, but they are talented, and they have an incredible coach in Jason Shirey. That's my sleeper right now. But yeah, right now it is kind of just Benton and Sheridan. And I don't know that I'd say everybody else, because there is a lot of talent, but those are definitely the two that you start with at the top.
Yeah, every year there's going to be a team that surprises us in all of these conferences. And I think we know that, but it's really hard to not stray away from the ones that have just seen success and continue to pump out success year in and year out. Now let's go to the 4A. P Ridge winning that state title a year ago, that state title championship a year ago. They return a lot of players too. And so with P Ridge and they defeated Bauxite, what jumps out to you in the 4A?
Well, the biggest thing about P Ridge is they do have a lot of players back, but they don't have the best, who I thought was maybe the best pitcher in the state overall, and Emery Bolin now. She's at UCA and getting some innings there. And I will tell you, listen, I think this classification is as wide open as any. I think you look at P Ridge still, you look at Gentry. I'll be honest, I put out just my own fun preseason ranking just because I enjoyed doing it.
Which I love. That's great.
And I'll tell you, I put P Ridge. I'm looking at it right now. I put P Ridge and Gentry at the top just because of reputation, just because of I know Gentry got beat up pretty bad in the state tournament last year, but usually in 4A you start in the 4A1. Farmington showed us that when they were in 4A in one state. Gentry showed us that. P Ridge showed us that. Gravitt has showed us that before too. Gosnell is a little, I guess you could call them a sleeper. They were a semifinalist team last year, but Avery McCann, outstanding sophomore pitcher, had a great freshman year, really good with their bat as well. You also got to throw the Bauxites in there. Monticello lost Elena Lyle, that was a huge piece, but got some really good 26s. They still swing it well. Brookland is a little bit of a sleeper. Brookland is very, very skilled, but they have a ton to prove. They got bounced pretty hard in the regional last year, so didn't go to state. This one is the Lone Oak, another really good team. I want to make sure I hit all my. Nashville is always in the. I mean, I'm throwing out all these names.
It really is wide open, is what you're saying.
Malvern has maybe
it's anyone's game.
Yeah, I mean anything in 4A, so it's just wide open. Malvern to me has the best hitter in Kendall Watson. So it's just about. I mean, this is truly a class where I think the ball is just where it bounces.
All right. I'm really excited to talk about, 3A, 2A, and 1A, because the one thing that I learned last year when we were doing these games is just those smaller schools, despite the fact that they are smaller classifications, just pump out talent and are just successful and maintain a level of execution and priorities in that sport. And it's really cool to see. And I know we're going to talk about Taylor coming up, because they just seem like all they do is win, which is exactly what they do. But I don't want to jump ahead of ourselves. Let's get into the 3A. And Mayflower winning a season ago, but is this as wide open as the 4A is, or is it a little bit more of a tighter race?
I would say it might be a little bit tighter. I still DeWitt's had a little bit of an up and down start, but I still like them. They've got a really good player in Harley Grammer. They lost AC
Mhm.
Cox is at Southern Miss now. Mayflower's definitely the favorite because they still got Ruby Otts, the state tournament MVP. They've still got Riley Crockett. They've got a whole lot of talent still. Harding Academy, Ace Ellis, one of the better players that's going to UT Martin. She's their pitch. She's
Mhm.
going to be outfield in college, but she pitches for Harding Academy. And then Smackover and Genoa Central down south. I think Ava Walker and Smackover, the pitcher, she's one to watch. I was very impressed
Yeah.
with what she did last year, off to a crazy heater. So I think she now, and they actually played a decent schedule through the first 3 or 4 games. I think she tagged me in her stats the other day, and she hit like over 800 the first week, and had a
Mhm.
crazy stats in the circle. So I think them and Genoa Central could be good. Baptist Prep, they haven't won a state championship since 2021, I guess it was, but they're still always in the mix. But it is, I would say it is pretty. 3A's always tends to be one of those that's wide
Mhm.
open. You talked about the smaller classifications. This is where you start getting those really good multi-sport athletes. And not that
Mhm.
there isn't in the higher ones, but like 3A, for instance, you look at Miranda Leslie at Mayflower, great catcher, maybe the best libero in the state in volleyball, certainly in the smaller classes. I think she's a point guard or in backcourt in basketball. So you got a lot of those multi-sport athletes that contribute in so many different sports, and that's what's fun to see here. But
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
Mayflower for sure. You got to put them at the top. Not again, I keep saying this, but not just because they're state champions, but what they have coming back.
Sure. What about the 2A? Again, Riverside, your defending state title champions. Do they make a return back to the title game, or how does that look?
So Riverside lost a lot. I mean, they lost as much as anybody
Yeah.
in any
Yeah.
classification. Those girls, and I talked about it during state last year. I mean, that a lot of those seniors last year were starters as freshmen.
Yeah.
I think 6 or 7 of them. So I
Yeah.
still have them in the mix, but it's Desark, and I go back to Kaylee McDonald that I said at the top. They've got Kaylee McDonald in 2 other arms. I mean, they have the best pitching in
Sure.
2A. I mean, without question to me. Tuckerman's got great pitching as well. I think they've got great. I know Tuckerman's another one of those got off to a little slow start. Like you said at the top there, I don't want to be disrespectful and say that the season hasn't started. Let's be real. The real season hasn't, because you've still got players coming back from basketball and it's still
Right.
early. But Tuckerman, I still think, is going to be one that could make some really big noise. Quitman's another one. Quitman lost their coach to Greenbrier. Stephanie is now at Greenbrier, her alma mater,
Mhm.
but they've got Marty Rhodes. You think about Maddie
Mhm.
Rhodes that took Bauxite to the state championship last year. Marty has a long history of softball. A great coach,
Mhm.
great dude. So I think the Quitman's going to be right there in the mix. I mean,
Mhm.
those are kind of the ones. East Poinsett County, they last went to the state title game in 2022. Mansfield's always another one in there as well. But to me, right now, it's
Yeah.
kind of Desark and Tuckerman maybe at the top, and then we'll
Okay.
see what the rest happens.
Okay. All right. We've made it to the 1A. And we were talking before we got started here. Um, it could get spicy.
Yeah.
It could have a little bit of a wild ride in 1A in a division where it feels like Taylor wins every single year.
Yeah, and pretty much that's how it's been. They're 8-time defending. Of course, 2020 there was no championship, but you
Yeah.
think about 2017, these seniors were what, like 11 when they won the
Mhm.
first of the 8 in a row. And now they did lose Ayla Buford. Ayla Buford, most decorated athlete I think I've ever covered. She's won every award in the book. She was a 4-time state champion, 4-time state tournament MVP, just about everything you can name. But they feel really good about Aniston Nolte. They would have liked to get her a
Mhm.
little bit more innings last year, according to Coach McHenry, but they got a lot that they replace in the field. But
Mhm.
as we said, it's a culture, Alyssa. That's the thing,
Yeah.
is you can't trade. Obviously, talent is great, but when you have a group that just is used to winning, they buy into that. Pressure is not really a thing. It's always going
Mhm.
to turn out to be good things for you. But
Mhm.
Scranton has a lot of juniors that have played since their freshman year. They lost to Taylor in the 24 state championship last year. That to me was probably, no disrespect to Concord, but I think that semifinal matchup
Mhm.
was probably the state championship with them. And then right
Mhm.
behind those two teams, I mean, I think Westside Greers Ferry could do some really good stuff. But really, once you get past those top three, it's
Yeah.
that's kind of back to that conversation of it's really wide open. But
Mhm.
Taylor, at being the 8, that's one of the better dynasties that I think you could probably put up against anything, not just statewide, but nationally. And the title
Mhm.
is theirs until somebody else says so. But I know Scranton's coming hard
Mhm.
for them this year.
Kyle, you've been covering high school sports for a long time. You've been covering high school softball for a really long time. How have you seen the talent around the state and all of the classifications continue to grow?
Man, I'll tell you. Well, you're in the hotbed of it right now. I mean, Northwest
Yeah.
Arkansas is just continuing to explode, and we've got it's doing well in Central Arkansas, and even
Mhm.
look at South Arkansas, and look, I'm not going to take anything away from NWA. That's where it really got big. But South Arkansas, you look in the '80s, '90s. Of course, Albie Early, Kent's dad. Look at what he did at Monticello, the winningest
Mhm.
coach in Arkansas collegiate history of any sport. Right above Norm, he's in front of Norm DeBryan. DBH a little bit maybe a little hot on his tails, but softball has really, but for between South, starting in South Arkansas, really in the '70s, '80s, whenever it was, and what has happened in Northwest, it's truly just amazing to see. And I think that's part of why I
Mhm.
love the game, but I think that's part of why I have such a passion for it, is because I'm
Yeah.
seeing the growth. You look at
Mhm.
2025 class, Brinkley Morton, who, I mean, I could go down the Mackenzie Freeman. I mean, you could just go down the list of all these D1 signees that we had here. And then you look above that, obviously what college softball's doing,
Mhm.
AUSL, the pro league, after 1 year, they've already got a contract for their championship series with ABC. The
Mhm.
game is just growing at an
Yeah.
insanely rapid rate, and we're starting to see some of those great
Mhm.
results here in Arkansas as well.
Yeah, it'll be really fun. And I think you just kind of look at it as a whole, as you mentioned. I mean, you could take it a step further with softball and baseball being back at the Olympics coming to LA in 2028, but softball being played at Oklahoma City. I just think it puts a really big emphasis on how big the sport has gotten. And I continue to argue with people who want to argue back with me. And I know you would agree with me with this, is that if you go to a softball game, you're gonna fall in love with the sport.
A
Like you
hundred
have to.
percent.
It is not baseball for girls. It's just not.
No.
And be able to go to a game, then you start to realize there is strategy. It is a pace. It is um it's just it's you got to be paying attention, right? Like I played the
Mhm.
sport my whole entire life, so that makes sense to me. But for people who don't get it, it like blows my mind. It's like you got to get there, you got to be there to see it in
Yeah.
person, and then people fall in love with it.
Well, and I think too, just in the first month and a half, it's crazy. We're already like over a month into the college softball season, but how
Mhm.
many times have you been scrolling through Twitter, X, whatever, and seen
Yeah.
record attendance here? Like we
Yeah.
broke an attendance record, especially like opening weekend. And you're looking at Bogle Park, Carrie Deaver Boaz, oh, I think I was muted. Carrie Deaver Boaz, who, is a great friend of mine, the first ever Razorback college coach, in softball, just talking about her compared to where the program was. Obviously 30 years, is a
Mhm.
while, but just
Mhm.
listening to her and talking about how they didn't have a catcher that could catch their pitcher because they had somebody throwing 65. 65 back then was like low 70s. It's not unheard of, but it just
Yeah.
wasn't as common. So, I
Right.
mean, just to listen to people that were in this game, Carrie, back when she was a three-time All-American, three-time women's college World Series runner-up, she was throwing every inning. So you think about how the game has evolved there. People were throwing their arms off, and now it's got a little. Probably the closest thing to baseball, or one of the closer things, is that they do
Mhm.
have that reliever system now. But yeah, you're exactly right. It's a totally different
Yeah.
game. But it's just, and obviously it's better for arms now, because that way,
Mhm.
like I said, you're not throwing
Mhm.
people's arms off. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just evolved, and as it's evolved, it's just becoming more and more popular. Of
Yeah.
course, I know ESPN Plus packages have helped that, but it's just great to see the continued growth every single year.
Well, you said you put yourself together just for fun because you love it so much. Some preseason, some rankings. You gonna be doing that all year? If people want to keep
Yeah.
up with how you're ranking softball, where can they find that?
Yeah, so Jared Hawthorne's a good friend of mine. He's a travel ball coach for Arkansas Platinum. We covered softball when I was strictly in the prep. Of course, now I cover the Razorbacks with a little bit of high school. But
Mhm.
he and I did a podcast for 4 years, and he's kind of like my right hand guy. I'm helping him and Jolie Mitchell on Horns Down. We got to make sure and throw that in there. No, Jolie's great. We're really glad to have her on board. But those two are going to do the podcast, like the weekly podcast on Arkansas Softball Central. It's a Facebook
Okay.
page, and we recently started that, and we're gonna have content on there, and I'm kind of just helping with the back end stuff, helping them post a few things, and I'll be on the podcast every now and again. But after spring break, we're actually going to have,
Mhm.
and Alyssa, you can get on this too if you want to, but we're going to have a statewide media poll. So we're going to have
Okay.
media members from all over the state, basically, and that way, because the previous rankings that we did, that was Jared and I's opinion, and I mean, I think we did an okay job with it, but this is going to give opinions from the southern portion of the state, the northeast, the northwest, so that way everybody can get involved. Now, Jared and I, just because we're so addicted to it, we're probably going to have our own, to compare to that.
Mhm.
But yeah, Arkansas Softball Central is
Just
going to
to
be the
see how
place
you
to.
measure up with
Yeah,
everybody
I mean, we'll
else.
just see. And
Okay.
that's the thing, is I kind of
Yeah.
hate it because he and I see, like, we think a lot
Yeah.
alike. And so I
Sure.
like to have a difference of opinions. And so we
Mhm.
do think differently. Once usually the first like top three teams is usually, excuse me, I got the hiccups. So that usually the top three teams are about the same. Once we get to that 4 or 5 range, that's where we usually start seeing difference. So we'll probably do that just for a little bit of extra added conversation. But yeah, no, we're going to have the media poll, and we'll have that out every week from, I guess, from after spring break until the state tournament, and then one final poll. So yeah, we'll have rankings, and then also we'll have player
Mhm.
features on Arkansas Softball Central. I'm also doing some historical things. So like if somebody has anything from the 90s during the slow pitch days and you want us to feature that, we'll
Oh
feature it.
gosh.
So yeah, back
That was
during the
the hot
shorts.
that was the peak of me. I'm just kidding.
Well, I'm going to say,
It is
well,
crazy. I was talking to coach early. I'm that old.
yeah,
How the game I played competitively again my whole life,
yeah.
but we were still playing on the competitive travel circuit slow pitch, and we transitioned in middle school, I think 7th grade, to fast pitch.
And y'all were
But we
wearing
were
short because
still
you're around
then
my
playing
age.
around
Wasn't that
playing
the,
summer ball slow pitch, and it shifted eventually, but
yeah,
like that's not that long ago. I'm not that
no.
old.
Well,
I'm
because
not that
I
old.
think you're a year or
That's
two older than
2000,
me,
that's 2000, 2001,
okay. So, well, but back
2002.
then
So
you're still wearing shorts and stuff, right? Like
yes.
that was,
Oh
yeah,
my
still
gosh.
wearing shorts
I
and
had the worst. This is the thing that I hated. We're going to go on a tangent. But I had the worst leg tan in the summer
I'm sure
because I
everybody
would have
did.
you'd have the tall socks to your knees, and then you'd have nothing from your knees to about mid thigh. But then you had shorts, which, you roll up as best you can, and then the sliding shorts underneath of it. So it was like a popsicle, just like really tan in the middle, kind of lightish tan on the bottom, and then just like pale white. And so all of my pictures from that literally uh 10 to 18,
Yeah,
all of my pictures in the summer, I just have a god awful leg tan.
I can imagine there were a lot. I
Yep.
never even thought of that, but no,
Oh, it's
that
awful.
makes total
I know
sense. Yeah,
the things that, I had to deal with that, baseball players don't have to deal with. And they don't deal with
right.
that now. They wear pants. But
Yeah.
no, it was the worst. I mean, our softball tan was awful.
Oh, I can imagine.
It was awful. And yeah, no, I have crazy stories. For the longest time, my AIM username was softball Barbie, because that's what they would call me, because
Aim,
I
kid.
catch a
Most
lot of
people don't
times.
know what that
Sometimes,
is.
like early on in my career, I would catch, and every time, like right after the game, straight to the bathroom because I had to fix my hair. And they're like, "Oh, you're such a softball Barbie." I'm like, "Yeah, I am. Sorry."
Well, most people don't know what aim is that are probably watching or listening to this.
That's fine. You know what AIM is? Call
I
me.
know. Oh,
I'll
I
send
had
you 10
aim. I had
bucks.
aim. I think my aim name was, this was like 12, 13 years old. It was like Playa Hada
Sure.
1280 or something.
That's
Back in the
funny.
early 2000s. So
Back then, back
yeah,
in the day. Oh, we're making ourselves sound old here, Kyle.
I know. I know.
But I'm excited. I'm excited for this season. I'm excited to be paying attention from start to finish as we get ready for the state championship games down the road. But we're going to check in on those rankings of yours each week, and then also maybe have to do this again right before the
Yeah.
finals game to see how many you got right,
All
how your
right, we'll do it.
predictions
Yeah, I usually do.
actually
There's been some years where
unfolded.
there's been some years where I've tanked really hard, and then there's been some, like I think 2 years ago, I actually got
Yeah.
like almost every class pretty correct. But I
Hmm.
definitely do keep tabs just to kind of see how well I did. But
Sure. All right.
so
Okay. Well, we'll keep track for you, but I really appreciate you breaking down
absolutely,
this and joining us here on Varsity Vibes. So thank you, Kyle.
absolutely, anytime. Appreciate you having me.
Great insight there from Kyle. And again, make sure to follow him throughout softball season as things get going and he puts out his rankings, as well as conversations that we are going to have here with some softball players and coaches around the state. Already had an opportunity to sit down with P Ridge's Josh Reynolds, as well as Bentonville's Kent Early, and those two conversations coming your way very shortly. So excited to share those with you. Again, thank you so much for joining us here on Varsity Vibe, and remember to follow along on our social media platforms. That is Instagram, X, TikTok, and Facebook. Also want to encourage you to sign up for our newsletter at varsityvibearkansas.com, as well as subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channel. Have a great one, everyone, and I will see you next time.